From there, we can start, we can end the practice mode and let attendees start filtering in whenever you'd like. Erica, if you could make me host either before or after that, that would be awesome. Thank you. What do you say? Should we let folks in now, or do you want to give me the cue in a little bit?
Corey is at the helm now, so it's up to Corey.
Let's see. Let's go ahead and let people come in, and I'll start reading the slide deck at 4:30. And once I've read through those, then we'll start.
Cool. Okay, here we go.
If we could start back over with the first slide, I'll read the content. Thanks so much. Welcome, everyone. As folks are trickling in, I'm going to read what's on our screen for access and provide an image description to what we are viewing right now. So image description, a deep magenta and green teal flyer with an image of KP and an image of Tequila side by side in the middle of the flyer with the event name, date, time, and registration link. Words that read, Creating Feminist Futures Conversation Series, the Land Back Movement in Indigenous Feminism, Wednesday, January 13th, 4:30 to 6:30 PST via Zoom, ASL and English live captioning provided. Catherine Paul, Black Belt Eagle Scout, and Tequila Reed, Divide and Dissolve. This conversation on the Land Back Movement in Indigenous Feminism features KP, a Black Belt Eagle Scout, and Tequila Reed of Divide and Dissolve. These two Indigenous musicians will share their perspective on Indigenous feminism, and creating and living in Indigenous feminist futures. This event will get started soon. We'll move to the next slide. On this slide, we have a light purple background with text in black conveying the following message. Save the date for our next and final event in the Creating Feminist Futures Conversation Series. Trans-Liberatory Feminism with Lexi Atzit and Luna Merbruja. Thursday, February 18th, 4:30 to 6 p.m. PST via Zoom. Also on the slide are headshots of Lexi Atzit and Luna Merbruja, each smiling with wavy shoulder-length hair and glasses. We'll move to the next slide. On this slide, our image description is a group of folks wearing a variety of clothes and hairstyles with arms around each other's shoulders as viewed from behind. Green background and black image and letterings. Words convey the following message. Oh, let's go back a slide, please. The Trans Women Community Project is returning for winter term. Join the virtual gathering space every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. PST via Zoom. I'll see if anyone can answer that question in the chat for you. Trans Women Community Gatherings center the lived experience of trans women and trans femme students at PSU. Come share your experiences, build community, and celebrate trans bodies and histories through activities, storytelling, and dialogue. Go to bit.ly/WRC community to register and get the Zoom link. And then our last slide, image description. Bird's eye view of silhouettes of folks gathered around a table with food. Yellow background, black images and lettering. Words convey the message within the caption. The Feminist of Color Community Project, formerly Feminist of Color Collective, is returning for winter term. Join the virtual gathering space every Wednesday from 3 to 4:30 p.m. PST via Zoom. Gather with other PSU students this fall in the space that centers the lived experiences of feminists of color through storytelling, dialogue, and community. Go to bit.ly/WRC community to register and get the Zoom link. These will be able to, we'll have these slides go on for about another minute before we get started, and we will start shortly. All right, we are going to get started. So we'll stop the slides. Thank you. So welcome everyone. My name is Corey Lita and I am the Assistant Director of the Women's Resource Center here at Portland State University, and I will be your MC tonight. Thank you for joining us for our third event in our Women's Resource Center's Creating Feminist Futures conversation series. We are so thrilled to have you here, and we're excited to be joined by KP and Tequila Reed. Before I share more about our event and introduce our speakers tonight, I would like to acknowledge the land we are on for those of us who are local to PSU. And I encourage you to look up what land you are on as well in this moment. Portland State University is located in the heart of downtown Portland in Multnomah County. We honor the Indigenous people whose ancestral lands we occupy. Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Banza, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge that Portland, Oregon has the 9th largest urban Native American population in the US, with over 380 federally recognized tribes represented in the urban Portland metropolitan area. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. It is important to always remember that colonialism is a current ongoing process, not only a historical artifact. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are and have always demonstrated resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands. We also shoulder a responsibility to make sure our university meaningfully includes Indigenous students and supports making education relevant to their lives. To look up whose land you stand on or are on, go to this website, https://native-land-ca/. To see an interactive timeline of historical events in the United States from an Indigenous perspective, please go to nativephilanthropy.candid.org/timeline. This timeline includes historical traumatic events, settler colonial policies, and Native resistance movements. I would also like to take a few minutes to introduce two of our WRC student leaders who will be sharing more about our Feminist of Color Community Project and ways to get involved. Ava and Yasmin, it's all you.
Hello. So the Feminist of Color Community Project, FOCCP, is a project of the Women's Resource Center that fosters space for students of color on PSU's campus to gather in community through storytelling, connection, and exploring dialogue of feminist possibilities. So this work is done by deepening understandings of feminist of color theories, expanding feminist practice, self-reflection, and building relationships with peers of color. So the Feminist of Color Community Group meets weekly, and we also host some occasional events throughout the year. So one main goal of us work is to build spaces of affinity and resilience within a predominantly white institution. Please keep an eye out for more information on our annual Feminist of Color Award Brunch, which will be happening during spring term.
Thank you. I will continue from here. So here at the Women's Resource Center, we work to uplift and center feminist leadership and feminist futures that work to dismantle systems of oppression, colonization, anti-Blackness, systems of violence, and other harms that keep us from our collective liberation. And our theme for our work this year is We Are Each Other's Future, Resistance, Resilience, and Interdependence. Our Creating Feminist Futures conversation series was created in part as an opportunity to decenter the dominant culture norms of centering academic voices and who is seen as an expert, thought leader, or source of knowledge and learning, and also to decenter the academic panel talk as one of the best ways to engage with a topic, which is why we have our speakers speaking to each other without a third moderator involved. With this series, we've been thrilled to bring to campus Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists, dancers, community organizers, writers, musicians, and soon comedians. Creating feminist futures as a concept is rooted in our desire to actively work to envision the future we both want and need, and hear from those whose lived experience as feminists can help us shape our vision for the future. Our hope is that conversations like tonight will support us all in being part of the collective work to make our feminist future dreams a reality. Indigenous feminism and the land back movement is one lens for us to think about creating feminist futures, and so is the power of music and art for our movement work and community well-being. So I'm excited to introduce our speakers for tonight's event. First is Tequila Reed. Tequila Reed is a world-renowned classical saxophonist and member of the heavy neoclassical decolonial doom band Divide and Dissolve. She was first introduced to music and the saxophone by her father. Tequila was born in Turtle Island, US, and is currently based in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Tequila has scored films, played in multiple bands, and performed solo throughout Australia and internationally. She has played alongside Sylvie Nahil in Divide and Dissolve at music festivals and art exhibitions around the world. Tequila's unique sound resonates across musical genres, as evidenced by the wide variety of people who engage with her performances. Divide and Dissolve cross neoclassical music with doom metal, resulting in a distinct and inimitable sound. Her music has been described as shattering conventions and transgressive. She has been featured in The Fader, CVLT Nation, Paper, Vice, Bandcamp Daily, Invisible Oranges, and Monster Children. We're so glad you're here with us tonight. And KP. KP is a musician from Sinawish, I want to say that right, Indian tribal community in so-called Northwest Washington state. She comes from the Paul family in Swinomish and the Hensley family from the Arctic region. KP's love for music started at a young age when her dad would sing to her to sleep with Coast Salish lullabies as a baby. The passion and connection for her Swinomish and Inupiaq upbringing is something that really drives her creativity through music. In her 20s, KP played in various bands until she found her comfort in her current project called Black Belt Eagle Scout. The band has traveled across Turtle Island on tour, and KP has released multiple albums on Saddle Creek Records. Currently, KP lives in her homelands and enjoys caring for her family and Mother Earth. Our speakers will be in conversation for most of our time together, followed by a short Q&A. If you have questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A function of Zoom. If you don't have a question, you can upvote the question you like for our speakers to answer. And with that, I'll turn it over to our speakers for our conversation tonight.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name's KP, and I'm really excited to be here speaking with my friend, Tequila.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks all for coming. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I can see how many people are in attendance, and it looks like 173 people have tuned in to hear us speak, and it, I just want to say thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and to listen to this discussion between two friends. Yeah, so Tequila and I we discussed a certain method on how we wanted to form this discussion. And a lot of that has to do with being able to interview one another and get to know each other more about our lives and what's important to us. I know that the poster specifically states the land back movement and Indigenous feminism. And I feel like our conversation is going to be one that's more layered and that isn't directly to that point, but I'm excited to be able to share these moments that we're having together. So, Tequila, do you want to start by introducing each other or telling everybody how we know each other?
Yeah. Well, I guess like over 10 years ago, like our mutual friend Peter was like, "Hey, let's go to my friend's house." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." Which was really fun because I was just like hanging out, doing not much of anything except like hanging out with Peter and listening to music and like exploring sounds. And he was like, "My friends really like music." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, cool." But then, yeah, that's when we met. And then fortunately, we've been able to like stay in each other's lives since then, which I'm like extremely grateful for because, yeah, but I just want to say thanks to Peter because he has lovely taste in people. And like, yeah, I'm really stoked we got to meet each other then.
I'm really stoked too. I remember that night I was living in so-called Portland, Oregon, and just was introduced to you and was like, this person is really amazing. I want to be their friend. And then we've kept in touch, ever since. That was about 10 years ago that we met. And I feel like some people that know us through music probably know us because of our bands and because we have these bands, and also, through our connection with the label Saddle Creek. I feel like people see that as well, but folks might not know that we've actually known each other for a really long time. So I wanted to start off with that notion of just relationship building and kinship, and how this conversation, I guess, is gonna be formed because of that connection that we have already. So if it's okay with you, I would like to start asking questions, and I'd like to start asking you the questions first, if that's okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, cool. So thanks everyone for coming. And let's see. So when we first were asked to be a part of this event, I was just trying to think of like what I wanted to know about Tequila in general, and like what I wanted to know about what her creativity is like. And so some of these first questions are about that. And so, I feel like it's obvious that we both play music. And so what I want to ask you first is about music. And I want to ask you, like, well, one, like, how do you write your songs? Like, what's your process on writing your songs? But also, if there is anything from like your life experiences that you put into writing music, if there's anything that, that comes out about in your life, does that go into that writing process of you creating music?
Cool. That's a great question. And also, I think you're here, Peter. And I just want to say I love you so much. And like, hey. But okay, so I guess cool. In terms of like writing songs with Divide and Dissolve, like Sylvie and I both like are like, we just want to like, we like to give thanks to the earth and to our ancestors, and like recognize where we are and who we're with, and like, and we just definitely like talk about that with each other. And then I feel like, okay, so like with our music, it's really weird. Like I'm always like, I call it like it feels like it's about to fall apart. Basically, the timing is very like you need an imagination with the timing and the time signatures, etc., etc. But I feel like we're connected with our breath and with like a mutual understanding. So when we sit down to write a song, it's kind of like, it's just more of like a thinking, relaxing process. I oftentimes will just be like laying in bed with my guitar, and Sylvia's like, oh yeah, that's cool. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And then Sylvia will like play the drums. And sometimes I just feel like I write like country melodies that are like just like a little chill folk song. But then then I hook it up to like all my pedals and everything, and then it just sounds really evil. And Sylvia's like, one of the best like percussionists I've ever met in my life. So our songwriting process is really like intricate and easy. Like that's probably like the easiest thing that we do with each other. We just like the songs come really quickly. And I don't like to put too much thought into it. I don't ever want to overthink a song, because that feels really strange for me. Like I guess in terms of like life experiences with it, when my dad was teaching me how to play music, he was just like, music should always be relaxing. This is like the place that you come to feel good and to feel relaxed. And like that, I've always felt like a huge sense of relaxation and like just like freedom in myself, and like this like just very like centered in myself. And I'm like, oh cool. And able to like, and when sharing that with other people, it just feels like super awesome. So yeah, I want to ask you, how do you write your songs? And like, how does it like get woven into your life experiences in terms of like your writing process of music?
Yeah. Well, I love how you said that thing about your dad, and how your dad talked about it being relaxing. I feel like I have a teaching from my dad too with music, and it's that, music is a place of, of love, and is a place where when you're singing and when you're creating something, that it's supposed to come out of love. And I guess that is relaxing too, like having those feelings of love and compassion and passion for things. I love that. um, uh, the way that I write songs, when you were talking about that, I got teary-eyed, because I was realizing that I miss writing music with people. The way that I write music is just by myself, and I miss that connection of when you're actually like when you're playing something with somebody else, like how beautiful that connection can be, and how powerful that connection can be, and how much closer that can bring you to someone else. I haven't had that feeling for a really long time. I've definitely had that feeling with other bands that I've been in, but I haven't found a person, since those bands, that I can actually feel really connected when I write. And so it just made me miss that. And I don't know, maybe I'll try and work harder on finding somebody. But I write music by myself right now. And for this particular project, that's sort of what I've always done. And it's the reason why I write music by myself has changed over the years. And, there was a time where I was wanting to write music by myself and do everything by myself, to prove that I could do that, and to prove that, someone like me with my background and who I am could do that sort of thing. And I think that once I was, comfortable in those feelings, it sort of morphed into like, well, yeah, of course, that's a possibility. Of course, that is a thing that is that can happen in the world. And it's sort of morphed into like, well, how do putting these like lines, or these like melodies, putting them together, how do they make me feel? And it came about with like this therapeutic process of like, when I put these together, like even if, you know, maybe they don't like totally fit together in a perfect way, but they do in themselves. Like, how do they make me feel? And the way that I do that currently, which actually I feel like I've done it ever since I started writing music, is with a loop station. I use a looper, and I write the foundation of my songs with guitar, and I sort of loop them. I feel like if you listen to all of the recordings that I have, you can sort of hear like the same line that's played throughout the song, and that is like this foundation that gets built upon. And because this music that I'm doing by myself, because I do all of it by myself, I feel like I have a harder time leaning towards creating lyrics. I feel like with my lyrics, I just sort of let them flow out in whichever way they can be. I know that there are musicians out there that like they really are like keen on writing like lyrics in this very poetic way and like having this, but that's something that has been difficult because everything else has to come out of me first. And sometimes by the end of a song, I'm like, wow, like I don't have enough energy to like put into these lyrics because my energy for the song has been put into all these other elements. So, you know, I've thought about like, what if I start a different way? Like, what if I start with lyrics? But yeah, I mean, also in terms of like life experience, like what I was talking about earlier with wanting to prove like that I'm a person that can like write this sort of music. Like I feel like folks who are tuning in probably follow us at least and probably know who we are and probably have read a little bit about our bands and our story, but like I wanted to be able to share my experience as an Indigenous person and as an Indigenous queer person, because I mean, one of the things is because of mental health, because I think mental health is important, and it's important, you know, to be able to have people that you can see that are doing things. Yeah, so that's
So I had a question.
yeah.
Which looping station do you use?
I use a Boss looping pedal. I have two of them. The one that I would primarily write with, like with for the majority of the songs that I've written and that I have recorded, is just like that. The Boss, I forget what it's called, but it's a square box and has two pedals. And you just like loop, and it has this button that turns to different stations that you can go to loop. And so I did a lot of writing with that. I have a different Boss loop station that's like the RC300 loop station, and it has different tracks, and it's like kind of this digital thing that you can like write lines into. Those are the ones that I've used. And it's mainly just because when I was younger, I asked somebody, like, what's a good pedal? And they told me, and then I got it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. So I wanted to ask you another question about music. And I wanted to know, when did you realize that music was important to you?
I realized it was important to me when I had this like experience where my dad was playing like classical music for me over the speakers, and it made me like lose it. Like I started crying and just like having like this moment where I felt like I was having like an out of body experience. It was profound. And I was like, I just don't know why it's so good. But in that moment, you know, he was like, you can play this too. So he started teaching me how to play piano. And I was like, this is cool. I was like 3 or 4. It was like probably one of my first memories. And he was just like really comforting about it and kept on always like playing me different types of music and just like making sure I knew that I was able to connect with this kind of like situation that provokes so much emotion. So that was definitely like the moment, and it continues to be like this like source of extreme happiness and comfort for me, just like experiencing music and creating it and like just floating in there with it. But when did you realize that music was important to you?
Okay, so first off, I love that you just talked about classical music, because I feel like when I was younger, I was really drawn to classical music. Like,
Yay!
I didn't realize that about you.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I was really drawn to classical like piano music. Like that's the kind of music I was really drawn to, like when I was, first like listening to music. And it's mainly because I feel like it was so dramatic. And I was like, whoa, I never heard anything like this. It's just this dramatic. It has like all of these like low tones. Like you know how like it with like piano, like people are like da 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 da, and then there's all this like da 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 stuff. It was just like yeah, it was wonderful. It was beautiful. So I love that you had like this similar experience with that. I mean, I experienced the same thing with that feeling of just like all of a sudden being like, wow, like I have this emotional connection to sound. Like these sounds that I'm hearing, like I have this emotional connection to it. And that definitely started when I was a little kid. I feel like with that, I feel like I don't know like if there's a particular way that you listen to music, but I've always found the way that I listen to music to be very interesting, because the way that I listen to it is I'll like notice certain instruments that are being played, and I'll listen, like I'll be able to just like go in and listen to like these different instruments that are being played in the song. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, I really like this bass line in the song, or like there's like this certain like that I can like hear the drums, but also I feel like that's maybe like because of how like a song is mixed. Like if a song is mixed with like drums maybe a little bit up front, or like if there's something that they want to stand out, I feel like I don't know. I love listening to music in that way. And another thing that I feel like helps me create an emotional experience with music is I love being able to listen to music and imagine myself playing it, the song. That's what I did that a lot when I was growing up, when I was a teenager. Like I would listen to these songs and I'd have these like favorite songs that I listened to because I loved imagining myself playing in the band to these songs. I don't know if you ever did anything like that.
Oh yeah, I love playing along to songs. I love I like I like I like whistling symphonies. I know that's a really weird hobby, but I like knowing every single part of the symphony and then whistling that part.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I definitely resonate with that fully. Like I think that yeah, I feel like it's so cool that you that we both like found that experience like really young and just were able to like connect there. I was wondering, what are your goals in terms of sound?
Goals for sound. I feel like I really love warm sounds and I really love like full sounds. And I feel okay. I'm just gonna state this. Like I know, like, and it's also to the audience. I know that we're talking about like music right now, and we will get to some other questions about like maybe that are more a little bit more political. But I also uh, to say that like I think that talking about music in this way, like the two of us, is political too. I don't know, maybe I feel a little bit shy because we're just talking about gear so far. But I think I love talking about gear and I love talking about process. And I think that it's something that really, shapes who we are. Um, but my goals in terms of sound are, yeah, or like warm and full. I love warm and full sounds, and I love to be able to have like this texture that is sparkly as well. I feel like those are something that I always strive for when I create music. Um, I feel like I always want to have certain kinds of sounds, but I've like every time I'm like writing like a song or like thinking about an album, I'll have these ideas of like I want to be able to have this certain type of sound, but I'm not yet at that point where I've done it yet. So I feel like there's still a lot of sounds that have yet to come out of me. But right now it's like warm and full and sparkly. Is there for you, like, is there a particular like sound that you have like for like a goal with that sound?
Well, in terms of like us playing live, I just want for it to feel like the earth is shaking and that the low end is like completely like taken care of. And also like for the highs to just like float in like all the appropriate places. But I just want it to just be like super impactful, like just like, oh my gosh, okay. I really like it when the ceiling starts to crumble down and then when the lights start to flicker because I'm like, okay, I plugged in a lot of amps. Hopefully it's like I remember the show we played. We got on this festival and like my amp like just caught on fire. I was like, okay, that's what happened. Like
your amp caught on fire.
oh yeah, that happens a lot.
I love that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my amps catch on fire. I'm like, well, there's another one.
Oh my gosh, that's totally like, yeah, of course the amp of the band Divide and Dissolve would catch on fire.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was loving how you were talking about having like a sparkly sound. Like I always talk about sparkle music. But that sound, it's so like it makes like for me like hearing that sound, it like makes music form this like amazing cohesive element that like people experience. And I loved how you were talking about warmth and fullness. And I like for people to feel the music and to like maybe feel like they're underwater because like that's a vibe, like going underwater. Just being in the swamps and like in the mud, like trudging along, but also feeling like uplifted as well.
Does that have anything to do with like when like earlier when you were talking about like the reason why you play music, like with having that connection to the land? Does that have anything to do with it?
You know what? Definitely, for sure. Like I feel like, like the water and me, we have like this connection. Same with the earth. But yeah, our music's definitely from the earth, and like I feel like that word resonance really encapsulates what I'm trying to convey.
Mm.
And I feel like super grateful to be able to access those frequencies.
Mhm.
I feel like Indigenous people, Black people, like people of color, like especially, are just able to like experience the heaviness.
Mm.
Just like, oh yeah, cool. Like our people have been through some things that are really intense, and this feels like a really great way to like have that communication. So like playing like doom or heavy music is like feels like a great way to like establish some communication.
Yeah, yeah. I like that what you said, experience the heaviness. I feel like sometimes when I'm writing music or when I'm playing music rather, like you know, there is a certain heaviness that I feel like I like to try and convey, or maybe not like to try and convey, it just happens. And I think it does happen because of who I am. And sometimes it's hard for me to explain that to people, but I feel like talking to you in particular, it's easy. Like you know what I'm saying. You understand what I mean.
Oh yeah.
But there is this heaviness that I think happens when I'm playing music. Like, sometimes my songs like that I, write are really kind of light, but also they're dark in this way. And for me, like one of the things that I think is really important in my life, which is really important for me right now too in particular, is my mental health, and trying to like be able to honor that, and to honor ways in which I can strengthen my mental health, or at least just acknowledge that certain things bother me, or certain things are not okay, like. And so yeah, that's something that I find when that definitely goes into when I'm playing songs, is that awareness and that acknowledgement of my mental health. I also like realize too that it's important to talk about those things as well, mainly just because like, I mean, for me in particular, I believe that like, if someone is struggling, or if someone is having a hard time, like that, like just the littlest form of acknowledgement can mean the world. The littlest form of acknowledgement can mean like living, and so I mean, like, I don't know if other people feel that from when when I play music, but I definitely do. And so I hope that like when I'm playing it, like that sort of energy can be conveyed out into the audience, or out into whoever is listening. Like it's interesting too right now, like if we were that, like the fact that like you and I are just talking, like normally when there would be people like that, we'd show up together, we'd go on tour, like people would be listening to us creating these sounds. I don't know about you. I don't know if you do a lot of stage banter. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I just like like playing the music. And so yeah, I'm here for this right now, for this conversation to take place, but also like um, it's interesting just seeing seeing the difference between like what it is when we come together to share space to like actually have a conversation, and what it is when we come together to make sounds. Yeah. I I don't know, I sort of went off on a tangent of of our questions that we wanted to ask one another.
Oh, I loved it. It was great.
But yeah, no, I wrote that down. Experience the heaviness of what you said. I really liked that. Also want to say, I know that people who are listening right now, and like I can see like folks that are typing in the chat. At the end, when Tequila and I like get through our interview questions, we can answer some questions. So if there's something that comes to mind that people want to be able to ask us, on the bottom there's like a Q&A and you can submit a question. But yeah, so I guess like I wanna continue on just with like a couple other music related questions, if that's okay. So when you're talking about like this like heaviness that you put out, this like heaviness that comes out of your music, like when you do that, like what, like how does that come out? Like what sort of instrumentation do you use? Like what guitar like comes, what guitar do you use when you do that? Like what sort of other tools do you use to put out that sound? Like what amps do you use? Like what sort of like pedals do you use? Like what helps you, I think. Like instead of asking you what's your gear setup, like what helps you create that, and how is that connection with, like how does that take place?
Well, that's awesome. Like one of my favorite conversations, gear. All right, so with my guitar, I use Fender Telecaster guitars. And the reason why I use them is because every time I go in the guitar store to like go pick up a guitar, I'll just like walk across there with my eyes closed and go like just running my finger across all the strings. And whatever guitar sounds the best is what the one that I'm gonna get. I don't care. Like, and you know what's funny? Apparently I like the cheap guitars, which is awesome for me. Because I went in with my dad one day. I was like, Dad, I gotta get a guitar. I don't have a guitar, and like I'm going on tour. I was like, I don't want to borrow my friend's guitar again. And it was a Tele. So I have like 2 of them. And they sound so full and like amazing. And it's just like, I don't know, like it just happens that these 2 guitars I have are the guitars that make the most sense for me. And in terms of like my amps, I like to use 4 or 5 different amps when I play with my guitar. So my bass amps are Ampeg SVT VR, the 300 watt tube amps. And I like to use that for the mid range of the bass. And then I like to use the Mach Bass 800 watt like solid state amp with those little cute preamp tubes. And then I like to use 2 like VHT guitar amps. I only use tube guitar amps because they sound really mean, and I believe they expose like the truth about your playing. Like when you make a mistake, it's like, hello, you have made a mistake. Like, and I'm like, cool. And when you do a good job, it's like, hey, great job. But you are like, it demands transparency for your playing. And I'm cool with that. Like, when I make a mistake, everyone hears, and when I don't make a mistake, everyone hears that too. So those 2 guitar amps are like really cool. And then I bring a backup Marshall JCM 800 amp on tour because I love those. I want to get another backup, which is the Freya amp, which is like the next generation of the BHT amps. It's the same company. I also really like subwoofers, 18-inch ones, preferably QSC. And I also play saxophone. So I really resonated with you when you were talking about like using a loop station, because that is another inherent part of my writing process. So like I play the soprano saxophone and guitar when we play it. And when we play, like if I'm playing sax in a song, I'll loop it with my Boss RC30 loop pedal, which I'm sure we probably have like the same loop pedal. And I toss it through those like Strymon Big Sky pedals, the reverb ones. And I have 3 of those.
Wow.
And I think I'm maybe like, I think it's pretty weird to have 3 like reverb pedals, but I just love those like dreamy, like cloud-like sounds. I love like floating there.
Yeah. I don't think it's weird. I think it's awesome.
And I also use I use a couple of octave pedals, the Pog 2 pedals.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's because the saxophone is like a monophonic instrument, and with like utilizing like the octave pedal and the reverb pedals, I'm able to access this like polyphonic situation with a monophonic instrument, which I feel like the guitar is like a way to have a polyphonic situation, because saxophone I sometimes feel like pretty limited with it. But then with the guitar you can just like play chords or whatever. And I'm a classically trained saxophone player, but I'm definitely not classically trained on guitar. But I love like combining those 2 like methods into like playing, because it just makes a lot of sense. I'm like, oh, okay. Like with saxophone, if I think of something, I can play it instantly. With guitar, it takes a lot of effort, and it doesn't even come out the way that I was thinking it would. But then that's also a learning experience as well, because like I love having 2 different methods of composing on 2 instruments, which feels very good. And on my pedal board, I also have like distortion, or no, I have an overdrive pedal. I switch between distortion and overdrive. And I have a tuning pedal, which is awesome because it's so easy to be out of tune. And I think I have like 20 pedals on my board. My board is like very big. It weighs like 68 pounds. Wow. Like I'm always like at the airport being like, everything's cool. I have this. Like, and then they're like, you're gonna have to pay $250 to put this on the plane. I'm like, really? So like my life is a lot of like me like grabbing, the pedals and being like, please just let me take this. But yeah. What tools do you use to create your sound, and like your amps, your pedals, like your guitar, and like
I feel like yeah, I mean, so I feel like there's a difference with creating sounds. I feel like there's like a writing difference for me and a touring difference for like the touring difference. I feel like
tour and the writing.
Tour and the writing. And like I've just like been on, like before COVID, I was just on tour for a long time. And so those are the tools in which I was, using and trying to create this sound that, when I first started thinking about a song and what I wanted it to sound like, I'm hoping that these pedals that I can use or this amp that I can use can help like, make that sound be somewhat similar. I feel like I lean towards practicality. whenever I am like going on tour and using pedals, like for me, I get afraid of huge pedal boards. And I like try and have like the tiniest pedal board you can possibly have. And
Love it.
like and like have like the tiniest, like there was one time where I was just like trying to like figure out like what pedals can I get that will work for me that are like this big.
That's really cool.
And so I mean, I just like, yeah, I've for like the past like, well, before COVID, before the past like couple years, I was in practicality mode of just like making sure that I had an amp that I could carry, making sure that I have pedals that I can carry, like because of being out on the road and how like how tiring that can be sometimes. I wanted to like make sure that like I wasn't as tired all the time, because I was the one that was, carrying my stuff myself. um, but yeah, I like reverb. I love that you have 3 reverb pedals. I feel like I would want to have 3 reverb pedals now. I have actually, you know what? I kind of do have 3 reverb pedals because I have a space echo and I have this teeny reverb pedal, and then I have a Dan echo that sort of has like a reverb in it. So I do have 3 reverb pedals, but I also
Sweet.
just like regular boost and like a kind of middle boost pedal. The like the latest configuration of the band before before the lockdowns happened was just a 2-piece, and so I was using an ABY splitter, and I was using like a sub pedal that would change my guitar tone from just regular guitar tone to like kind of a bassy guitar tone, and it was shooting off into a bass amp. And so I was using a guitar amp and a bass amp at the same time, or like would like turn one on at a certain time, depending on like what the song needed when we were playing it live. And I was also using the RC300, the Boss loop station, because I had like pre-recorded certain sounds that I wanted in there, that I wanted to be able to play during certain songs. So I was really trying to like figure out like how can I like do this music project with just me controlling all of the melodies. And that's what it became. But I guess I want to move on a little bit, and I wanted to ask you, and maybe people are wondering too, just because of the whole, like during this time that we're living in, and the fact that this conversation that we're having is virtual and that folks are tuning in virtually, like is there a new way, or is there a different way, or is there a same way, like with music? Like what does it look like for you right now? Like has like this past year changed in any way, like in terms of like how you look at music, how you feel about music, and your like position within like your creativity in music? Like what is that like for you right now? Is there certain things like that, like within like your life that you like realized like that are like really important or something like that?
Well, okay, so like COVID is so like weird, and I feel like it just gives like extreme isolation vibes in general. I would love to sit down and write a song and see what it sounded like right now, because I feel like this time is so intense, but also like things have just been intense basically. So I'm not sure like the song would sound different. And in terms of like music life, I'm like, whoa, I'm not on tour at all. Like, and I'm not playing at all. And I don't know when that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's like really like interesting, like just like not knowing when the next show I'm gonna play is, or which is like cool because I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like adjust. I'm gonna like adapt to like this difference, which is a huge and profound difference in life. But I like the idea of adapting.
Mm.
Oh, what does music look like for you now, and like your outlook on music and everything?
I feel like I definitely have a very different connection to music right now than I did. And I feel like it's because I can't see what's in the future. Like, I don't know what the future holds for myself and my connection to music. Like, I feel like it's very cut off right now. And I'm like at a very like interesting point in my life where I'm like, I just need to take care of myself. I need to take care of my well-being. I need to like put my mental health first. Like, I need to take care of myself. And maybe, you know, that means not focusing on music all the time, not putting as much energy as I did into it, and focusing on other things in my life that are also mainly more of like survival things. I feel like the past year I've been in a survival mode of trying to like figure out like, you know, how am I gonna live? How am I gonna support my family? Like, those are the questions and thoughts that I feel like were most important to me, rather than like, what's this song gonna be like? Like, I just didn't feel like I had the privilege of like being able to sit down and like focus on a song. I was mainly just trying to sit down and figure out, well, how am I going to pay this bill, or like, how am I going to live, you know? And so music has, and my connection with music has like definitely shifted in the past year, and that has changed a lot. You know, and what I'm grateful for is, because of that shift, I feel like I've been able to focus on other things that are really important to me. And I moved back home. I moved to my homelands of Swinomish, where my dad's side of the family is. And I just like realized that I love where I'm from so much. Like, I love it. And, you know, where I live, it's really beautiful. You know, you know what it looks like up here.
I do. It's
Yeah.
incredible up there.
Yeah. And so what I've been, you know, realizing is also important to me right now is just being able to connect with nature, and being able to connect with the land that I'm from, and being able to connect with the water that I'm from, and trying to rekindle that connection. Because when I lived here as a kid, I, you know, graduated from high school, and then I moved to Portland, and then I went to college in Portland and lived there for a really long time. And so I was gone, you know, away from where I grew up, which is on an Indian reservation. I was like away from an Indian reservation where I grew up for over 10 years. And so now that I've moved back, like, and have like I guess a little bit of life experience of living and, you know, having a job and going on tour, you know, traveling around the world, like, it's definitely a different, like, I feel like I'm trying to figure out like, who am I, and what does that connection to this place mean to me now that I'm older, and, you know, what's important with that connection, you know. So that's something that because like I don't have this connection, like direct connection with music right now, it's been able to open up these other things that in my life that I feel like I want to be able to have. I'm looking at you, Tequila, and you look like you just froze from the internet. I think you did. Oh wait, I can see you now. You're better. Okay. All right. Hey, you're back.
Oh yeah. The internet.
The internet. Yeah, where I am right now. So I don't know if people that are watching, if anybody is like living in the Coast Salish territory, but there was a really big windstorm last night, and so there's power outages all over where I am, and I have this like little tent that I got for a boat that was in my parents' yard, and the winds, there were like 70-mile-an-hour winds gusts, and it ripped the tent off and like brought it over to my dad's firewood pile. And so today I was doing that. And yeah, today's been an interesting, a very long day. I feel like if today feels like 2 days for me.
Wow.
But yeah, I wanted to, I just have, for the people that have still tuned in, we have one more question about music, and then we're gonna get into some political questions, if there is such a thing. Okay, so, and this is about space. Like I like to like imagine space and what spaces that we can create, and like how that can be for us, for communities, for our outlook, like for the future for us. And so the reason why I like thinking about spaces and actually trying to create these spaces is because I want that to be like more of a normal thing, that in the future, that people don't always have to be like, oh yeah, I need to try and create these spaces, they're already there. So so this one is about spaces on tour, this question. And I wanted to ask you, like, if we were to tour together, which will happen in the future, letting everybody know that's a thing that's gonna happen. What would our tour look like? Like, what would that look like? Like, where would we go? Like, where would we play, and like what's important? And I'm asking you this because, like, when we go on, like normally when I go on tour, like with what that current, like with what the situation was pre-COVID, like I'd go on tour and I would play at like a music venue that was also a bar, or like, this smaller place. And I would try and focus my energy on making it a safe space that Indigenous people can come into, that Black people can come into, that like is something where like people feel comfortable. And so sometimes when I would go like to like some like play some like dive bar, like that was hard. It was challenging. And so I've been trying to. Someone says play Navajo Nation. Yes. And so there are these thoughts of like, well, like I have the ability to reimagine what, like, when we're sharing music with people, what that could look like. And so as like a future. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, all right. I know I feel like extreme confidence that we would have like the most beautiful audience ever. Like 100%. I like would love to meet these people that come to the show.
I mean, there's people here right now, so we're talking to the most beautiful audience ever.
That's so true, 100%. And I feel like it would be like in Turtle Island, but also like we could play around the world. Like that's cool with me. I don't mind. And I also feel like we would be eating like the best food. Like basically when we tour, it's like food of center. I'm like, so when do we get to eat next? Where are we eating? And like it's cool because like with touring and stuff, it's like friends are like, hey, come over here, whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, we would like eat a lot of food, we'd have a ton of fun, like we would play at the Navajo Nation, we'll go see Dana love you so much. Like we would be on tour with Dana. Like we would I don't know, we would like, it would be so cool. Like I feel like we would just like make sounds that are like so intense, like, you know, and it would be like super like, for me that would be like a really healing situation, just like getting to like be blasted by you every night and like us play shows together, because I feel like we have a lot of things that we both want to be happening in the world, and to like get to share that every night on stage would be like creating that different space out there that's possible, that's like not always like possible to create when you're on tour with someone else, because sometimes you may not have like the same goals.
Why? Yeah, I want to know why.
Why? That's a good question. I think it would happen because I think it's because like I strongly believe we're supposed to be playing music. Like I think like our ancestors want us to be playing music, and that's why we put so much effort and energy into it, even when it's hard.
Mhm.
Like what we do is not usually easy. Sometimes it is,
Mm.
but like there's a lot of like things that you have to go through.
Mhm.
And fortunately, like, yeah, there's that like extra layer involved there.
Mm.
But I think that's like why it would feel so good.
Mm.
And I think we both like really care about the earth and the water and the people and like our families and like the future and the past and the present, and like just literally on this like non-linear like trajectory of like time and space and energy in terms of like musicality and positionality. So I believe with all of those elements into place,
Mm.
if we were to tour together, it would just feel awesome
Mm.
because we would have each other
Mm.
and be able to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's not normal. Or but like I just would love to share with you and your team, because like we both have like things to offer, and we both offer them at the same time on the same stage. it it feels like a vibe. How about you? Like, what do you think our tour would look like? Where would
I
we
feel,
go?
I
So
feel like, yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of it for me would have to do with kinship, and would have to like do with like relationship building. And for me, that's a value of mine, of being able to like to, you know, put work into a relationship of somebody that I care about. And so like when you were talking, like all of that stuff was resonating really like a lot with me, and was resonating about like being able to just do something that we both love and together, but also from a space where we're like there's we have this knowledge about ourselves. We hold this knowledge about all of the things that happened to us and to our ancestors, and we hold this knowledge that also like um you know can be heavy. And so like I feel like that's something that is really important, is to be able to have a space where that can be valued, where that sort of thing can be valued. And I think sometimes when I go out on tour, wherever I'm playing, sometimes it doesn't always feel that way because of the societal structures that are in place. Because of, if I'm playing at a particular venue and I'm like realizing like, oh, like this venue just like has this off energy, and maybe it's because like there's this genocide that happened in this area, or certain things, like, and so I feel like, when that happens, like, sometimes I feel alone because it's just me and like maybe one other, two other people within my band that are Indigenous and that like have those shared experiences. But I feel like if you and I were to tour together and with your band, like we could support one another in that way when we're going throughout the world and traveling and sharing our songs with people. But also like one of the things that I love being able to do when I'm on tour is I love being able to visit friends, and I love being able to visit people that hold this meaningful place in my heart. And it's funny because when your friend was like, play Navajo Nation, like the place that I feel like that like really like sings to me when I visit is in Albuquerque.
Oh yeah.
And because I have a lot of friends there, and so like so yeah, and I feel like I'm at a place in my life where I want to be intentional about like where I play and intentional about what kind of space I'm trying to create, and also recognize that like I have that power to like ask for those things, whereas maybe I didn't feel as confident before of asking for those things, or like whereas like when I would play a show, like maybe only like 20 people would come, and so like the venue didn't think I was powerful enough to ask for those things, or like wouldn't give me those things. But now I feel like that I've gone on tour and have played so many shows, I feel maybe it's not necessarily power, but maybe it's more so confidence in having that ability to ask for things for myself and to stand up for myself. I feel like I hear a lot like of support from my friends within BIPOC communities of saying like, telling me or like telling you like, you can stand up for yourself, you can ask for things, like that's a thing. Just like those words of encouragement. And so yeah, this intention I think would come about if we were to go, or when we are going to go on tour together.
Yeah, I would love if we played with Weed Rat and Lilith. When we play that show there, that would be so sick.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
All right. Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna ask you a question.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
How do you feel about emotional labor that is implied you are supposed to give, especially around political discourse or discussions?
Yeah. Maybe I want to ask you that question first. I don't know if I'm ready to answer that. I can, but if you want to answer it, that's okay. Or that would be awesome. I don't know.
All right. I'll answer it. How about that? Okay. I feel like a huge part of like the colonial project and like white supremacy and genocide and like all those like super oppressive forces is like the culmination of the entitlement to like Black and Indigenous people's bodies. Like slavery is feeling entitled to someone's body, like rather that happens in like the carceral estate or like all these other like different like presentations of it. So when people are like demanding things of me that I don't necessarily want to give, it doesn't feel good. And sometimes because of like this like inherent political positionality that our bodies like occupy, people feel like maybe I'm down to like hold space when I'm not. So that's like kind of how I feel around like that emotional labor. And I wish people would know that like sometimes there are questions that they ask me when I'm not prepared. And they are like they're not expecting all the answers. Like maybe I'm like, hey, I actually don't want to have this conversation right now. Like it's cool to like ask a question, but like if I'm like, hey, I'm not actually prepared to have this conversation right now, if that's like not an acceptable answer, that's where the problem is for me. And I don't think it's like appropriate to imply that someone that you're like entitled to their being or emotional labor. So how about you, KP?
Thanks for answering that first. I was like, oh yeah, we've come up with that question. I don't feel quite ready to answer it. I mean, you know, I think that like I feel like in terms of like having a band or like being a musician and like, you know, talking about things that are important to you, like if you're in a band and somebody wants to do an interview with you, like I've definitely like, you know, spoken my mind like 110% of the time and like really like explained honestly how I feel about things. And I feel like that has changed a little bit for me. And so when you know I'm asked to like, you know, talk about things that maybe have to do with being Indigenous or maybe have to do with being queer or maybe have to do, you know, with certain things like that, or just like things that I've said in the past, like, you know, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, wow, like that was cool when I had that energy where I could talk about it in the past, but I don't anymore. And, you know, instead, what I feel like I'm growing into, or what I feel like I'm like trying to be more aware and supportive of, is my emotions and my you know, ability to keep walking every day alive in this world. And so, you know, it and so I'm saying that because I feel like you know, people go through these instances where you know, there's a lot that happens in your life, and there's a lot that happens, you know, with who you are, and that affects like your well-being. And at certain points, like sometimes you just have to care for yourself, and you can't like be you know, you can't put energy into something that is maybe triggering for your emotions, or that is maybe like I guess just, you know, hard to deal with. And I want to and so I want to say that because I think it's important that like Indigenous people, and that my community, that your community, that, you know, we have that normalcy, we have that ability to experience joy, we have that ability to be happy, and we have that ability to say like, you know, I don't want to have this conversation that maybe is not going to make me happy. And so, you know, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when I say things, people don't always agree, and that's okay. But, you know, I'm speaking from my heart, and I'm speaking from like a place of where I know that like I need to take care of myself. So maybe that answers that question. we have like a couple minutes before the official audience Q&A, I think, is going to start. And I know that we still have a bunch of questions. So I kind of wanted to skip to the last question, if that's okay.
Cool.
Which has to do with the title of this event. So
I would love to ask you this question, which is,
yeah.
how do you feel about nature?
How do I feel about nature? You know, I think how I feel about nature has to do with the blood in my veins, has to do with my ancestors, has to do with the sound of, like, you know, the wind that passes through. It has to do with that feeling that I have, you know. And our question, how do you feel about nature, is a different way of asking, like, what do you think about land back? And so, you know, I wanted to start off with this, like, just like there's this inherent connection that I have, you know, with, especially with where I'm from. And I think sometimes it is a privilege because I am from this specific spot in the world. My ancestors are from this specific spot in the world. I know that not everybody who is Indigenous is able to live in the specific spot in the world where their ancestors were from, you know, especially due to different historical things that happen with relocation and different implications due to genocide. And so I guess from, you know, what I'm trying to share right now is I want to acknowledge that I have that privilege of being from the specific part of the world still where my ancestors have always been from. And so that really impacts this connection that I have. And I was realizing that when I moved back home and I started going on hikes. And when I would go on these hikes, I would like notice, like, oh, I'm like talking to the trees. And I was like doing it automatically. Like, you know, like I'm having these these feelings about these like trees and these plants, you know, and these huckleberries and all these things. I'm having these feelings about them. And that's when I realized, like, wow, you know, like this is something that is truly a big part of who I am. And I think that, you know, it plays into, like, because, you know, we have that, or I have that connection to this particular part of the world. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that we should be stewards of this land, you know. There's no doubt in my mind that connection should remain true. And so that's just for me in particular. I know that everybody else's you know, outlook and opinions about that is very different. And so, like, I don't like talking for all Indigenous people, you know, I don't like talking for all Black Indigenous people, like all. And so that's specifically for me and my connection in this community that I live in, this small community. So I also want to say that as well. That's, you know, those are those thoughts that I have when I go on these walks that I'm able to do. What are your thoughts? I'm curious, like, what do you think about nature? Like, is there a connection that you have to it, like to Mother Nature? Like, is there something that is important to you about that connection to land, and maybe also that ties into who you are?
Yeah. Well, I I love what you had to say. That felt really nice. Thank you for sharing that. Also, I do feel like I have a connection to nature, the land. Like I I am like Black and Indigenous. Like my So it's kind of like this, like, it's so interesting, like being like of like from this place where like, oh yeah, like some of my ancestors like got like brought over to Turtle Island and were enslaved. And then some of my ancestors were here already. And I'm just like, whoa, like I feel like so grateful and so proud of like who I am and like where I'm from, and like it's such a gift to be able to like walk around out there and like just like have the wind hit me and be like, oh my gosh, like whoa, and like to be able to like go to the ocean and like go in the forest and like just be out there and like have a good time, and to like be grateful that like my ancestors like survived and passed down like all these like cool gifts, you know. Like I just feel like an inherent connection to nature as well, and like I just want to learn more, basically. Like I want to continue to like fight like feeling dispossessed and like fight like this like colonial propaganda where it's like, oh yeah, like sever yourself from nature and like what you know will make you feel good, and like don't take care of the land, you know, like because it's like there's so much out there that's like trying to separate like Black and Indigenous people from like the land and like the life and the love that it has to like give us, and that, you know, like it's just so beautiful out there. And yeah, I basically just feel like in awe of like the strength and the beauty that's out there, and I just want to know more in general. I just feel really open and humbled and like grateful. And I also just like, it's so like intense, like navigating all these like different things. But it's so cool that like we get to like go on walks and like go talking with each other. And like you were saying, like talking to the trees, I'm like, yeah, those plants are like talking, like the flowers, everything out there. I'm like, that's pretty special to like be able to experience that connection and that relationality. So yeah, like I was talking to my friend Dana, who hopefully is here still. They were talking about the plants because they are into food, like, and planting food for their relatives and like helping provide food for like their relatives. And like I feel like there's so much to do and so much to think about. So like in terms of like feelings about nature, I'm like consumed with like thoughts and care and questions. But yeah, thank you so much for like making all these questions with me.
Yeah.
I really like appreciated that a lot, and it feels like so awesome to be able to share that with you. Because like, you know, when we first met, like I was like, oh my gosh, who is this? Like, this is awesome. Like, I was like hoping that you would be in my life, because you know sometimes you meet people and you're like, can you please be my friend? Like, like I definitely felt that when we first met each other, but now I like having this question or having this like experience where we continue to be in each other's lives, I'm like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So I'm very grateful to be able to talk to you, because it's, like, thank you, Peter, for introducing us, because I'm like, oh yeah, perfect. Thank you. You knew. I didn't know, but now I know. So I'd love to move on to like the Q&A stuff.
Yeah. I have it pulled up. And yeah, there's a bunch of good questions. I want to answer the second question first, if that's okay, or at least ask it, because I feel like maybe this first question we kind of touched on. So I'm gonna ask it, and if you want to start, that's cool. I can start as well. It's the one about if there are any Indigenous artists, like musician or otherwise, that you're especially excited about right now. And maybe that can also be a part of this next question about, like, also, are there elders or ancestors, icons that inspire your work, or like any activists or artists that have impacted how you look at things, or opened your perception. So if there's any people that are meaningful to you, who are those people and why?
This is a great question. Thanks, Lizzie, for asking that, and Maria for asking that. I love the bands Lilith and Weed Rat. They're so badass. They're really inspiring, and same with like with War. There's also this artist Matthew Lilliput. Yeah, my friend Aganok made these earrings for me, but Aganok is like this amazing like weaver, makes these like baskets that are awesome, and is just like so good at making stuff. Oh, my friend Archie, who goes by like, his Instagram's like Archie the Shy Con, which I think is a cool name. We bonded because we were talking about being Black and Indigenous, and I was like, oh, sick, like that's a vibe, like we have that connection. And like I love that designer Brass Arrow. I'm like,
you're just like shouting at all these people.
I'm like, because I'm like, I want some pants from there. I'm gonna buy some pants. I was like, pandemic looks. I'm like, I can't get on my sweatpants. I need to buy some Brass Arrow pants. Like, and I really like that other designer. I think it's like Jakima. Yeah, there's hell of like Indigenous people and activists and artists. My friend Dana, love you. Like, Dana's awesome. And Dana's sister Tiffany. There's this like cellist named Ruby. I forget Ruby's last name, who's Maori. Also Huriana. They're like this badass artist. Like, love their art. And you know what? I'm forgetting people, and I'm sorry, but I have a lot of love out there, and those are some people I can think of. How about you?
Oh, that's great. I love it. I feel like I want to talk about the second part of the second question, maybe a little bit more about like if there's any elders or ancestors. And I was talking earlier about hiking or just like going on walks. And there's this place where I live called Kukutali. And it's this beautiful preserve. And it's essentially supposed to be like this preserved little island, what you can walk to, but sometimes it gets cut off when the tide is high. that is essentially just supposed to look like what all of our land looked like back in the day before colonization hit this area of the world, or started hitting this area of the world. And so I like to go walking there because I like to picture my ancestors there. And I like to think about, look around and just like try and think like, well, in this certain path, there's like these huckleberries that are up high, or like on this other path that, there's like these certain other kinds of plants. And, there's this little ravine area that's sort of down on one side of the on the island. And so I like to just like think about like or just like imagine my ancestors walking in the same path that I'm walking on right now. And I like to imagine like what they would be thinking, like, or sometimes like I like to sing, and I like to like hum things. And so I like to imagine like this reality, I guess, of like, I wonder if my ancestors ever walked on this path and sang, like hummed to themselves, or like, I wonder if they ever made up a song on this path. Like, how like right now, like if I go there, I'm making up a song. And so like, and it's like, I even though I'm imagining it because I know it's real, and I know that happened. And I don't know, maybe it's just about that particular place, but whenever I go there, like there's something that just is really like, just like is connecting for me, because whenever I like step foot, I'm like, okay, like I can like, I can see these ways of living here, and it's really beautiful and it's really peaceful. I get teary-eyed because it's like I care so much about where I'm from, and I want it to live on. And so yeah, there's so much history of where I live, and there's a lot of history that is sad and that is tragic, but there's also a lot of history that is beautiful and that is, meaningful, and that is, just, I don't know. So I guess maybe that's an answer to that question of like, are there any ancestors? I didn't name anybody in particular, I think, but I was just thinking about how I have those thoughts. Okay, so there's a lot of questions. So we have about 10 more minutes left, and so I want to try and get through the questions, but I want to also acknowledge that we might not get through all of the questions just because of the time limit. But do you want to look at another question on there, Tequila, to see if there's one?
Do you want to pick one more? And then
I can.
I'll pick one after you. And then...
Okay. Let's see. Well, maybe I'll ask this question because it's the one with the most likes, even though we sort of talked a little bit about it, but maybe we can talk more directly about it. It's by a person named Rebecca. And Rebecca says, the colonization of the society can sometimes make one think or feel that our creative voice is not significant. If you have experienced this, how are you overcoming that? Does that make, did you?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I have a really short answer for this one.
Okay.
And all right, so colonization is like sending this like pervasive message that I should hate myself. So I put a lot of energy into like loving myself and others around me and believing in myself and believing in those around me and like believing in the power of like Black and Indigenous people. And that's my answer.
I love that. I love that. That's a great answer. Yeah. No, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree 100%. I feel like sometimes it's hard to love yourself, especially when there's so many things that are like violent that are trying to get you. I love that you said that. No, that's really meaningful. And I think that, you know, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, duh. That's like, yeah. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe other people needed to hear that. I love that. I'm just going to leave that there because I feel like that's a really good response to that question. Let's see. Do you want to pick a question?
Yeah. Okay, Holly. As a white presenting Indigenous woman, I'm hyper aware of the privilege I have from the color of my skin. Elizabeth Warren, while surely well intended, did some damage to the acceptance white presenting Indigenous folks in the Native community. What are some ways that white presenting Natives can advocate for Indigenous communities while still keeping our privilege in mind? The thing I have to say about this is it's like it's so interesting, like the world's perception and viewpoint of people and like how like the color of our skin and our proximity to like whiteness and like white privilege, white supremacy, like all of the stuff, you know, like I think the most important thing around this like issue, because it comes up quite a lot in like conversations I have with friends and everything. That's why I like took on this question. I didn't want to, but then I was like, wait, I actually do want to say something, which is like, I think it's hella important for like us like to be like removing like the hegemonic narrative of white supremacy from our indigeneity in general. Like, and with that, like, we all can like do different things to disrupt that. So like sometimes like that means like if someone doesn't think you are who you are and then they say something like racist or whatever, it might mean speaking up, but it also might mean a lot of different things. Like I don't think there's like one particular answer. So I think it's just like interacting in like a loving, compassionate way towards others that like is like not a part of like the colonial project and like that kind of like thinking that is like expected. And I just like I think it's really like cool that you're interrogating that, and that's kind of all I have to say about that one.
Yeah, I like that. Let's see. There's a lot of questions that just popped up. I feel like we could answer one or two more.
Oh yeah, do you want to put a question out there?
I'm gonna look to see if there's one. I'm sort of looking from the beginning of when folks answer. I like this question about like, what does the stewardship of land look like for you all? I feel like that's a big question though. So I don't know if maybe that can just be the last question because that might take up the whole end of the conversation between you and I. Yeah, I feel like this question, I'm still trying to learn like what that could look like. And I'm in this learning phase right now where I'm trying to listen to what other people have to say. And I'm trying to be able to have space for other people to talk and to figure out what is important to people. I'll start off with that, but also like Takia, if you want to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I come from a very specific background, I guess, because of the how do I say it? Like, because of where my people are from. You know, I'm Swinomish, and from my dad's side, I'm enrolled in the Swinomish tribe. And so that's at like the corner of, you know, so-called Washington State. And so all throughout history, like you had like, you know, folks like the colonization and genocide happening. And it took a while before it got to where my people live. And so my perspective is from that experience of you know, being able to hold on to something maybe a little bit longer than other Indigenous people might have been able to. So I want to start off with that. And so I've been reading this book by Vine Deloria Jr. titled Indians of the Pacific Northwest, mainly just to like learn about like who I am and where I'm from, and like, you know, I have like that knowledge of like talking with ancestors, but also like ancestors haven't specifically said at this point in history this is what happened, and like, you know, like this is like the reason why this particular thing happened. And so I've been trying to like learn more, and I've been trying to learn more about like the ways in which like we got to where we are right now in this present day. And in terms of like land stewardship, like for me, what I'm trying to say is I think that might look a little bit different, or just like might come from a different perspective than other people because of who I am and where my people are from. But I mean, like I mean, I feel like I want to state the obvious. Like, of course, like Indigenous people and Black people should be able to steward the land. I think that's like very obvious and upfront. But in terms of how we're going to get there, I feel like I still have a lot of questions, and I'm still trying to learn how that process could work. Like whether it's the total um, like destruction of of the white settler colonial state, or whether it's like other routes of trying to find ways to you know, make sure our voices are heard. That's something that I'm not sure about right now, and I don't know if I have that answer. And it's interesting because like I feel like whenever I like I'll look at like, you know, like Rise Indigenous or like Seeding Sovereignty's Instagram page, and people ask that question, and I found that like it's like some people just don't know. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's the fact, maybe they just don't want to speak for everybody, but maybe it's we're still trying to grow and we're still trying to learn and figure this out together. Um, that's my take on it. You know, obviously I welcome like, you know, like I said, I'm trying to learn from a people. And so I'm trying to learn like what it is that other people, Indigenous people, that other, you know, Black people, that Afro-Indigenous people have to say about our futures. And so right now that includes listening and trying to have conversations and talking to friends and people and like dear friends like Takia, and like, you know, getting to understand one another, creating kinship. So that might not be the answer that people wanted to totally hear, but it's an explanation of like, you know, where I'm at with that question. Yeah, because I feel like it's, you know, I don't think it's just hard for me to totally say this is what it should be, because it's like I'm just one person and there's so many more people in this world. But yeah. Anyway, I know that there are a lot of questions and a lot of people or a lot of people ask these questions recently. And so if you want to email me, or folks want to email me and create conversations, I'm down to email. I think you can find my email on my website, which is blackbelteaglescout.com. But or you can find me on social media. I'm not on social media as much lately because I'm trying to preserve my mental health. But maybe I'll see you eventually. But Tequila, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share kind of an ending, because I know we're almost at the end of the allotted time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a great answer. There's a lot of things that need to happen, and there's a lot of different conversations that need to happen. But I fully agree with what you had to say, and also I'm very happy to have conversations too. Just hit me up on Instagram. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that needs to happen, and it's cool to be doing work that you just won't get to see the results of. I love when people plant trees and it's oh yeah, 40 years later it'll have fruit on it. Cool. That's how a lot of different things work in the world, feels like. And yeah, having this conversation feels like planting one of those trees that will have fruit in 50 years or something. I'm okay, sweet. But yeah, I really appreciated y'all coming to this discussion. Thank you for hanging around, and it was it's so nice to be able to talk with you and be able to connect, because that feels really cool. So yeah.
Oh.
Thank you both so much. Genuinely, deeply, thank you. I want to wrap us up and, just really thank and honor all of what you shared tonight with us. And it was really lovely on this end of it, just to witness your friendship and what you had to share. And I don't know if you'd use this word, but just nerding out on the musical side of it as a non-music person, that was just delightful to see people be passionate about what you're passionate about, and to make those connections to, our passions and our work and our world and our land. And thank you. I also want to thank our ASL interpreters, Kayla and Kaylin, for doing all of this great work tonight to increase access. Our live captioner, Tracy, our tech team, Leif and Dugan, who supported us tonight, our event co-sponsor, Portland Community College Women's Resource Center, Ava from our Feminist of Color Collective project, who joined us, our WRC staff team, and last but not least, all of our attendees who joined us in conversation and by being here with us and making us feel well, we couldn't see you. It definitely felt like you were there, at least for me. And it's so exciting to know that over 400 people had interest in joining us, and there was many people watching the YouTube, and people are going to watch afterwards. And so it's just exciting to be part of something that people care about. We put a bunch of links in the chat of, on ways to stay engaged. And we can put those in there one more time if needed. To sign up for our next event on transliberatory feminism, how to stay connected with our work, and how to stay connected with KP and Tequila's work as well. So thank you, everyone. Be safe and well, and just, clap if you are home and want to clap by yourself, but just thank you, thank you so much. And take care, everyone.